The African Continental Free Trade Area (AfCFTA) aims to create a single $3.4 trillion market on the continent, necessitating integrated capital markets to mobilize long-term financing for infrastructure and trade. It promotes the free movement of capital, allowing for cross-border investments and enhanced liquidity. Key initiatives include regulatory harmonization, digital payment system (PAPS), and increased cross-border listings. What is the role of capital markets in all of this? We'll be answering that question in a moment. My name is Leah, and you're welcome to The Policy with Leah. We begin the business of the day with major happenings around the economy.
Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, has stated that the banking sector recapitalization program is progressing in accordance with the approved regulatory timetable, with activity accelerating as the March 31, 2026 deadline nears. Speaking at the close of the 304th Monetary Policy Committee MPC media briefing, Cardoso disclosed that 20 banks have fully met the new minimum capital requirement, while a further 13 banks are at advanced stages of their capital rising processes and are expected to conclude within the stipulated timeframe.
As at February 19, 2026, total verified and approved capital raise stands at 4.05 trillion naira.
He said the 50 basis points cut on the benchmark rate was due to positive economic fundamentals. The federal government has outlined a rigorous roadmap to transition Nigeria into a $1 trillion economy, asserting that the target is a specific, measurable decision rather than a mere political slogan. Minister of State for Finance Doris Uzoka-Anite made the disclosure in Abuja, where she was represented at the 2026 Finance Correspondents Association of Nigeria (FICAN) annual general meeting, where she revealed that achieving this milestone will require the nation to maintain a sustained GDP growth rate of between 10% and 12% annually over the next decade. It was themed actualizing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's $1 trillion economic agenda, reforms as a foundation to Nigeria's economic transformation. Policymakers, the academia, market operators, industry players, students, and the media converged on Abuja for the third edition of the Professor Uche Owalake Colloquium themed Future-Proofing African-Wide Economic Integration, Infrastructure, Innovation, and Capital Markets. It was a platform to galvanize ideas on how to coordinate reforms capable of unlocking sustained growth in Africa through the capital markets.
As the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, we value platforms like this that promote a genuine handshake between the town and the ground.
The DMO remains committed to its objective. For us, it was a strategic objective to support the development of the market.
Reforms are expected to deepen the capital markets, encourage consolidation among operators, and improve governance standards in line with global best practices.
Africa, should not lag behind when it comes to innovation. Africa should not be a passive consumer of innovation.
PaySal Kenya's de facto instant payment network has partnered with the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System (PAPSS) to ease cross-border payments and speed up regional financial integration. PAPSS is an initiative of the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, in collaboration with the African Union and the AfCFTA Secretariat that enables cross-border payments between African countries. The partnership enables instant 24/7 cross-border payments from PAPSS participants into banks and mobile money operators within the PaySal network in Kenya, all settled in local currencies to reduce complex correspondence, banking requirements, and resilience on foreign reserves currencies.
And then we take a step to our policy conversation for this week. It is the AFCFTA and capital markets. The African Continental Free Trade Area AFCFTA is crucial for integrating African capital markets, aiming to harmonize regulations and promote cross-border investment to mobilize long-term funds. By creating a unified tariff-free market of over 54 countries, it encourages Pan-African investments, cross-border listing, and capital mobility, boosting the performance of regional stock exchanges. Sterling Ellis is a top stockbroker, among other things, and he is the CEO of Sterling Ellis Inc. He joins me to explore these interesting continental developmental issues. Nice to have you join me for this conversation.
Thank you very much, Leah, Katong, Babatunde. It's wonderful to be here again.
And it's nice to have you back on sets.
Sure. It's always exciting to be here.
Thank you. You were at the Professor Uche Waleke colloquium. For the average Nigerian, the question will be, why is the capital market crucial for the AFCFTA?
For the African Continental Free Trade Area to be viable, you definitely need the capital markets. For example, Ghana has a very viable capital markets. Nigeria, of course, is a leading, sub-Saharan Africa capital market. And the financial architecture and infrastructure to facilitate and support trade and investment is very vital. Without that, there will be no connectivity among the entrepreneurs, who are seeking funding, to generate infrastructure projects, financing, to make sure that industrial growth is achieved. You need the capital market. Without the capital market, it's simply impossible to allow the African Continental Free Trade Area to be viable. It can't do what it's meant to do and achieve its mandate if capital markets are absent from the architecture of it.
So a critical point that was raised was on regulatory harmonization to have this in place, and I'm wondering how critical is this to the actualization of the free trade area?
Regulation, policies, standards are quite vital for the harmonizing of, for example, the bureaucracies that different countries have need to be harmonized so that everybody will be on the same page. And the standards, the policies that each country has must be such that every other country will be amenable and accept, the standards that they all agree to work with in order for funds to flow from Nigeria to Ghana or from Ghana to Nigeria. There has to be an understanding, and the harmonization of the regulatory framework is the only way to achieve that.
So when we do this harmonization, there's the question of so many other things. We've seen the West African sub-region, for instance, try to get the single currency that is not working because those conditionalities have not been met by the bulk of the countries, and we've seen the French-speaking ones move out to take over the ECO for themselves. And you look at all these things, the payment system, we actually have a payment system that is working, even not to the point that a lot of people will want. So how do we harmonize this?
As you know, currently tokenization utilizing stable coins, which is something between cryptocurrency and traditional payment mechanisms, which is tied generally to the dollar or to some kind of asset, commodity asset. And there are certain algorithmic, moves that surround stable coins and the like, but a continent like Africa, a sub-region like West Africa, doesn't have the wherewithal to start, getting heavy into that payment mechanism. But you have different payment systems that are currently in Africa. For example, you have the Pan-African, payment and settlement system, PAPS, which exists in 17 countries with national connectivity switches in 14 countries or nations, and in 150 banks, commercial banks. They are all tied into the PAPS system. You also have MFS Africa that has activities in about 40 countries or so. You have Flutterwave, you have Paystack, Cheaper Cash, which is pretty much an inexpensive way of reaching areas where, the traditional units like banks, don't exist at all. A mechanism that is being used that is very inexpensive to transfer money. In some certain areas, it's free. And of course, you also have what they call WISE payment system, pretty much deals in FX, among African countries. So there are, quite innovative mechanisms for trading systems to thrive and also for payment systems to, function effectively. In terms of relativity, Africa is not doing badly compared to the United States. Of course, they can't compare, but in the US, you have payment systems like Stripe, which is the second largest payment system. They are into using stable coins, to pay merchants dollars at a discount. In Africa, PAPS does transactions at 50% less cost. And some of the transactions that used to take months or days now take seconds. So Africa is really doing very, very well. We're expecting that with the perfection of the collaborations to establish the African Mercantile Exchange, we'll be able to get involved with tokenization, decimalization, and the democratization of trading mechanisms, utilizing, currencies that are digital. The Nigerian e-naira was supposed to have taken off, but we are still, I would say, not there yet. But there's every expectation moving forward that we'll do whatever it takes to fast track the payment systems that would allow everybody who desires to invest, in the mercantile exchange or who needs to trade would have the ability to do so. Because the tokenization mechanism must allow for like $10 or $20, to be used to establish an account. So if you know what you're doing, you can build your portfolio with $10. It could become $20 tomorrow, maybe $100 the next week. If you know what you're doing, you can start small and start building. So there are quite a few opportunities that are playing out in Africa. I think the entire world is pretty much focusing on Africa in terms of allowing Africa to finally, see the light of day. So there are a lot of efforts in place for Africa to be economically self-sustaining. So we are doing the best we can through the plans to establish an African investment bank. So if we want to do major projects, we'll be able to use that African investment bank. It's going to be a private outfit. It's not going to be publicly owned. The African Mercantile Exchange is also a private entity because the incentives would allow for these private entities to thrive, beyond what public entities are known to not be able to do. So we are bullish with the prospects that between the African Investment Bank and the African Mercantile Exchange, the entire African continent will be opened up. Of course, the African Investment Bank would be able to allow the mobilizing of investments from one territory or boundary to another. Cross-border integration, through the AfCFTA, will be possible. But you need the African Investment Bank, you need the African Mercantile Exchange to be able to digitally trade in livestock, in agricultural products, in energy, in petroleum, in rare earth minerals, because you need to get value for money for your natural resources, for you to use those funds to support infrastructure, project finance, and the basis for you to be self-sustaining is replete in the natural resources that you have. You have to find the price discovery, value for money from the Mercantile Exchange. And of course, the investment bank will be able to scour the world and secure transcontinental flow of funds into not only Nigeria, but Africa. So the prospects are very good because very powerful countries like the United States of America and the United Kingdom, Europe, they have deep interest in making sure that they are players in Africa and that Africans receive value for money for their natural resources. So we as Africans, we are not resting on our oars, and waiting for anybody to do much for us, but it takes collaboration to allow for foreign direct investment flows to occur, foreign portfolio investment flows to occur.
I want to hold you on infrastructure actually, because infrastructure remains a source of concern for the bulk of African nations, Nigeria inclusive. And so, what can stock exchanges do for nations on the continent? Looking at Nigeria and all over the place, what can the stock exchanges do to pool resources that can finance
Mega
infrastructure?
projects.
Yes, the mega project to bridge the deficit, and our government's looking that way.
Yes, Mr. President, His Excellency Siwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is quite conversant with what it takes to grow an economy. And he's placing Nigeria first. And as the most populous country in Africa, he's providing requisite leadership by acquiescing to the establishment of the African Mercantile Exchange. And of course, that would also key into the capacity of this particular entity that's going to facilitate the collaborative effort that will establish the Mercantile Exchange, would also be able to bring in foreign direct inflows and foreign portfolio inflows on a mega scale. We'll be able to use agility and resilience in the markets to make sure that funds are flowing for solving our electricity needs. We need energy independence, and to have energy independence, you have to deal with using funding from around the world, to achieve infrastructure project finance on the mega scale. We're talking about $100 billion, $200 billion projects. So there is that need for local content brands to come in and be in the forefront of making sure that the funds are flowing and that the financial markets of the world are open to, our access, so that the funds would seamlessly flow. There will be an opportunity through Mr. President's initiatives. His reforms are creating opportunities that we've never had in the past. And with the perfection of the joint venture agreement and do the regulatory framework that is requisite to establish the tech and infrastructure setup, and of course, do a pilot launch of the exchange, and of course, being digitally connected through a distribution network to exchanges like the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Group. There are 4 exchanges that forms the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Group. So we'll be connected to these kinds of world-class, seasoned exchanges that will open up the possibilities for growth in Africa, not just in Nigeria. And as a transcontinental capital markets and commodity markets professional who is duly qualified to practice in these spaces, I believe strongly that we're on the right track, and Mr. President is doing the absolute best to make sure that this becomes reality as soon as possible. But as far as money flows to support infrastructure growth and development in Nigeria, that's a sure thing. It's definitely going to happen. We simply need to do our homework, make sure that investors are protected, make sure that the infrastructure and the institutions are in place, and then the rest will be history, because the world knows that Africa has come of age and that we deserve, the dignity and respect that we've been toiling for years is pretty much here and now.
So, on the whole, now, what is the year looking like from your position? How do you see the markets performing this year?
The markets will definitely perform well, regardless of how we slice it. People are starting to recognize that the capital markets, especially the stock exchange, the NGX, being, the frontline exchange in Nigeria, is a well-positioned institution for wealth creation. And they have direct access to investing in the market through digital means. So it's easy to directly invest in the exchange now than before. So people have the capacity to just use their phones, and purchase shares as they please if they know what they're doing. So the exchange is always going to do well. But as an investor, if you're a day trader, you have to know what you're doing, when to buy, when to sell. But if you're investing for the long haul, you might decide to invest in blue chip stocks, like the ones that have always performed well, the bellwether stocks that would always do well regardless of, what happens. But you have to, have a good financial advisor or stockbroker who would guide you, or you have to know what you're doing so that you can possibly save on management fees.
And that's on people like you, because we don't have lots of participation in Nigeria when you look at other climes.
Yeah.
So it's on people like you to give out that knowledge and the videos.
Yeah. For me, I'm biased towards sovereign investment advice. That's my forte, because my qualifications allow me to scour the world. And there are others, who may prefer to do retail, stockbroker-related activity, but mine is, related to mercantile exchange business and investment banking at the sovereign level. But I'm amenable to doing everything I can to educate, the masses whenever I'm called on to, on issues that I believe are germane, to provide requisite education to people.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Sterling, for making time for this conversation and for adding value as always.
Yeah, thank you very much. I am very excited to be here. And moving forward, I believe that Nigeria is on track. We might have distractions, but those distractions are being tamed. And I have very sizable confidence in Mr. President doing, what he has to do, and of course putting Nigeria first, and providing leadership in Africa. as the giant of Africa that it is.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leah.
Next is our education segment, Simplified, and from there we take you to the local commodities market. Rebirth here. Don't forget that for market details and more, you can always log on to our sister website. It is www.marketnigertv.com. We have all the details here and more for you. And also, don't forget to keep a date with us via our YouTube channel. Send your comments, questions, and suggestions because we value them to help us serve you better. The Policy with Leah is available on our partner stations, Kaftan TV, Global TV Nigeria, and KSMC News. Be safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day. And God bless Nigeria.